Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. We have talked about this directly and indirectly in the past, but it's going to be a great convo about a high caloric intake at breakfast versus dinner differentially influences weight loss of overweight and obese women. This is a completely female study. We're going to extrapolate some fasting nuance to it, talk about fasting schedules, eating earlier in the day, things that we have changed our tune on over the years. So excited to unpack this. Incredible results. Just like, wait a minute, did I just read that right?
Right.
So this is about 70% of our challengers, 80 to 90% of our coaching, 60 to 70% of our listeners on the podcast are women that are wanting to lose weight. So we are excited to dive into this and go over this article with y'all and give you some action steps to continue to adopt a fasting lifestyle. And it just amazes me, Tommy, that this is from the Journal of Obesity in 2013. And it's like, how have we not seen this? Like, so, I mean, if you guys ever have any articles that you want us to go through, please, info@thefastingforlife.com.
Yeah.
Let us know what you want us to talk about. We're happy to do it. So welcome in if you are new. Head back to episode 1 if you want to learn a little bit more about Tommy and I, our journey with fasting, how it transformed our lives. We share our story with you in that first episode. I believe it's about 30 minutes long. I haven't looked in a while, but it's our most downloaded episode of all of our 4 million, close to 4 million downloads. I mean, tens of thousands of people have connected with us in that way. So it's there for a reason. We want to let you know that we're on this journey with you. So welcome in. Thanks for giving us a shot. If you're so inclined as a long-term listener or an OG, as we like to say, we would love you to take a minute and drop a 5-star review. Those are our favorite kind.
Yeah.
Yep. Lots of talking today. Lots of podcast records. Yep. Lots of words. And we're just grateful for you guys listening in. Download, subscribe, share,
Thank you.
whatever the new iOS update is on getting the episode each and every week. That tells the podcast world that we're delivering value and that we're going to continue to go on this mission to empower folks to lose weight, to simplify their life, and ultimately regain health, prevent disease by adopting a fasting lifestyle. So we're on this journey with you, Tommy, and excited to get into this article that was in the Journal of Obesity, a clinical trial of high caloric intake at breakfast versus dinner and how it differentially influences weight loss on overweight and obese women. So before we go into just some of the crazy percentages that came out and address the caloric restriction component and talk about the article itself, from a fasting perspective, we've changed our tune since our number one resource used to be the Fast Start Guide, 6 simple steps to put fasting into your day-to-day life. And like 80 to 90% of folks, after tens of thousands of people downloaded that reference. And by the way, if you want more support, head to the show notes. You'll see links to the next challenge. You'll see links to all of our resources, the new fasting persona quiz, research article links, all of that stuff will be there for you. But we've changed our tune on this, not on one meal a day per se, but the use of one meal a day is kind of like a tool in your tool belt. And there's some visual representations of what that looks like in the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss, another free 20-page PDF. Download it, use it, put it into your day-to-day life starting now. Super simple read. One of our most downloaded resources. Enough shameless plugs to all of our free stuff. Anyway, this one meal deal concept is when we did that and we had this little mini video course that went with it. I mean, 80, 90% of folks would select OMAD dinner.
Correct. Yeah.
So from a fasting perspective, our mindset has kind of shifted, right?
Yeah, because it's a very simple method and it's repeatable, which is great, which makes it sustainable, and it makes you not have to worry too much about some of the details or the timing or things like that. And then also like socially, I don't have to feel like I'm saying no as often, which is a really, really good thing. But you go a little bit deeper, and then you go into the habit pattern of it, which is one thing. So then it can become difficult to kind of switch gears whenever you have a lunch opportunity or you need to eat some breakfast because it's good physiologically, or just as another tool in your fasting tool belt. And then we start diving into what actually happens if we were to take the same meal and we take it from dinner and we take it to lunch or we take it to breakfast. Is the insulin response the same? Is the change in my blood glucose the same? Is a calorie just a calorie? Or is the insulin response just an insulin response because it's the same meal, it's just a different time of day? Should I get the same fasting results or caloric restriction results if I change this main meal timing? And for me, coming from the calories in, calories out kind of medical model of things, when I was trying to get the weight off for so many years and it kept slowly ticking up, then
insert insulin resistance, metabolic dysfunction.
Yes.
Wait, yeah, all that stuff.
Unbeknownst to me.
Yes.
But
surprise!
Yeah,
like jumping out of the closet.
Yay!
Hey, I'm here.
Woo! It's like a Jack in the Box. Like liver enzymes creeping up and kind of everything ticking up slowly over time. What I was also doing was I was intaking most of my predefined calculated calories from mostly good foods too. A lot of good food choices in there, but the majority of those calories, probably over 60% for sure on average, probably closer to 70% ish, were coming in the probably after like 6 o'clock at night. There were some all-nighters in there in college, and late nights were kind of a regular thing. So push the calories a little later. And
or
so
you didn't get it in throughout the day. You missed it for a reason. Life lifed, or
yeah. Or
so
I was saving
like,
them up. I was saving them up maybe for a bigger meal later on in the
so
day.
either you missed them and now you got to get them in to stay on track, right?
Yeah.
Or yeah, you were saving them up for a wonderfully balanced food relationship experience.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been even something so simple as like a restaurant opportunity or a celebration.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, hey, we're
night.
not going to eat dinner at home tonight. We're going to go eat out. Yeah,
it could have been. But either way, I was definitely pushing those average calories later in the day, but all the while assuming that it wasn't really making all that much of a difference. Well, turns out I was woefully mistaken.
So interesting, because we've talked about this before, the 8 a.m. meal versus the 8 p.m. meal with the difference in an insulin response, right? So there's a study that we've talked multiple times of on different podcasts about this. And I just remember this in real time. We also had a protocol when we would have wired and tired folks or folks that were having sleep disturbances, stress response, HPA axis dysfunction, hormone imbalances, et cetera. The recommendation would be immediately to move your meal earlier in the day and start to prioritize protein, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's cool that some of this stuff is, we prep for this article, but as you were talking, I started thinking about where we've had these conversations in the past. So the Lindgren et al. Compared two meals with identical calorie content and macronutrient composition, one at 8 a.m. and one at 5 p.m. And there was more pronounced elevation in glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide and GLP-1 in response to the morning meal. So it was a more rapid insulin response, resulting in lower glucose levels in the morning meal.
Yeah. Your body is just reacting more efficiently.
Yeah, less insulin resistance, right?
Yeah.
So there was also the other study, the 8 a.m., 8 p.m. study. This was Luang et al. So there was Lindgren et al. And the second study was Luang et al. This is the one that popped into my brain in real time, so I just pulled it up. Postprandial glucose levels were significantly greater, so less effective insulin response, right? Just like the 8 a.m., 5 p.m. study that we just talked about. They found that postprandial glucose levels were significantly greater after the 8 p.m. meal. versus the 8 a.m. meal.
100%. Yeah.
So meal timing and glucose regulation, yeah, circadian biology, yeah, all of that stuff goes into this article from 2013, which I absolutely love, Tommy, about this concept that we have this OMAD skill set, this tool, this repeatable cyclical, what we call fast cycling to lose weight. We just did an episode a couple episodes ago about 36 to 60 hour fast once a week compared to caloric restriction and those changes that we saw. But shifting your meals earlier in the day is going to have a dramatic change on the markers for metabolic syndrome. And that's really so fasting glucose, insulin, HOMA-IR, glucose, insulin, ghrelin, hunger hormones. We don't want metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome leads to diabetes and obesity and ultimately all-cause mortality due to all of the comorbidities of those issues. So metabolic syndrome is abdominal obesity, glucose intolerance, hypertension, dyslipidemia are all linked to insulin resistance, ultimately, which means it's freaking hard to get the weight off.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So this study was really cool because they were looking at two different groups. So these are all overweight and obese women. So the higher end of the overweight category, so 25 to 30 on BMI. If you've listened to us long enough, you know our thoughts on BMI. We did a whole episode on BRI, the body roundness index, waist circumference, waist height ratio, much more indicative of insulin resistance, and then all of those other word salad that I just said in terms of metabolic syndrome. All of the things we don't want on our yearly blood work, right? And the increased waist, the increased sizes of our suits and dresses and shorts and pants. But the higher end of the overweight and the lower end of the obese category, so 25 to 30 and then 30 to 35. So the average was about 32.4. And they looked at these women had metabolic syndrome. So they were put into two isocaloric groups, 1,400 kilocalories a day. Okay. We had a big breakfast group, the BF group, 700 breakfast, 500 lunch, 200 dinner. So a little snacky poo for dinner, right?
Okay, so it's tapering off as you get later on in the day. Half of the calories coming in at breakfast. Okay.
Yep. Which you were saying was the opposite when you were doing, half the calories or more would come in later in the day.
Yeah,
right?
I was in the other group, which is where they flip-flopped it. They did 200 at breakfast, 500 at lunch, and then 700 at dinner. That was the bucket that I found myself in.
So metabolic syndrome, hypertension, blood pressure, glucose intolerances, diagnosed or undiagnosed, abdominal obesity, so increased waist circumference, abnormal lipid profiles, right? Cholesterol panel profiles. You might see some liver enzyme elevation, right? Some kidney enzyme elevation, right? Things that are directly linked to insulin resistance. Okay. You might see some inflammatory marker elevation, right? But just from the metabolic syndrome definition, this is going to increase the type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and overall mortality that we're talking about. So there's a dietary focus, right? Not just on calories, but on the quality of food and the timing, right? Fasting, aka time restricted eating, time restricted feeding, fasting, and circadian biology, right? So the meal timing plus the fasting window, right? So shifting your one meal a day to earlier in the day, and then focusing on the quality of those decisions or the type of food that you're going to eat, right?
Yeah. And so when I love that you just mentioned circadian biology, because that was the big aspect that I used to ignore, especially when tracking calories and tracking macros and being in a caloric deficit, all of these things which are good in theory, but at the same time, since I was ignoring circadian biology and circadian rhythm, there was this big gap of why I was getting so much of it wrong and why it wasn't working very well. And quickly it was working less and less as the years went on. So you basically, we talk about insulin resistance a lot, but you can take the intraday insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity and see that there's a change as the day goes on. So you will have a different response to food and to any glucose or food load as the day goes on. It will get worse as the day goes on and get less efficient. And this is for anybody. And you don't have to already be overweight or have insulin resistance to to see this, but it will be worse the more weight that you have to lose, the more layers of insulin resistance you have, et cetera. And so understanding that in the brain, you have what's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is responsible for circadian rhythm, but then that goes way beyond to lots of peripheral tissues as well that are regulating metabolism, enzymatic activity, that and these are in the fat cells, in the liver, and then all throughout the gastrointestinal system that then determine what's going to happen when enzymes
when you eat a calorie.
Yeah, right, right. As soon as you need to metabolize something, what's going to happen and how efficiently is it going to happen? It's dictated by circadian rhythm. So that's the big missing piece that I feel like is not talked about enough in these conversations.
100%. Meal comp, timing, influence, satiety. We just talked a couple episodes ago about the fact that hunger on the longer fasting group actually went down, right?
Right.
You saw this balance. You saw a better compliance. So timing matters, quality matters, shifting your window earlier in the day matters. Because when we talk about some of the results of the study, Tommy, I mean, just big picture, I'll just run through them. Stop me, raise your hand, throw up you just dropped a SCN nuclei, and I smacked me in the face when it comes to circadian biology. But the key takeaway there was that effect, the timing effect, the circadian biology effect, when you eat your calorie effect on the liver, right? Processing the food, storing as fat, gluconeogenesis, glycogen, right? The
liver's
intermediary.
deciding. Yeah, the liver's deciding what to do with that fuel when it comes in.
Yep. Okay. Fat burning, fat storing, and then adipose tissue, right? So centrally located, specifically the visceral adiposity. We just did episode on that, right? Protein pacing plus fasting showed a much greater reduction in visceral adiposity. Crazy numbers in just 4 to 8 weeks.
Crazy.
Okay. This is the defluffing effect. Hey, the scale's not moving. Yeah, but I'm down a pant size. Okay, that's body composition change. Hey, scale, stay where you're at. Keep doing body. Keep doing what you're doing. Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that circadian biology timing on the adipose tissue, right? A metabolically active tissue.
Yes.
And then the gut, duh, like nutrient absorption, right? So waste excretion, right? So all important. So really cool stuff. It's also, it can be called like this combination of chrononutrition, right? The circadian clock system plus when you're eating.
Sure, yeah.
And when we look at this front-loading calories in the morning, 2.5 times greater weight loss.
Wow.
In the breakfast group versus the dinner group.
Yeah.
I love that they named it the BF and the D group. So D like an A, B, C, D, F grading scale. For when you should eat. 2.5 times greater weight loss. So 8.7 kilos versus 3.6 kilos. So Tommy, do some math, pounds.
Yeah. What's that? Like, I don't know, 17, 18 pounds in one group versus about 7.5 or 8 in the other.
Yeah. Some of y'all like, I'll take the 7.5 or 8. Right.
Sure.
But 2.5 times. Okay. This one is mind blowing. Better insulin sensitivity, 57% better insulin sensitivity in the morning versus in the afternoon or evening, which was 33% improved. So improved, right?
Yeah.
But better insulin sensitivity. Holy moly.
Right. Do I want nearly double the results? Heck yeah. And would I be willing to move my nutrition window into the earlier hours of the day? Heck yeah. At least some of the time to develop that as one of my fasting tools and be willing to do that a few days out of the week. And because it doesn't have to be every single day in order to get substantial benefits from it. But then also lowering triglycerides 34% in the breakfast group versus the dinner group. And then
hold on. You buried the lead on that one.
Yeah, right.
33% decrease in triglycerides in the breakfast group, but a 15% increase in triglycerides in the dinner group.
In the dinner group, I definitely fell into that bucket where it was like I spent a lot of time in caloric restriction, but it was at the end of the day and still saw some blood markers ticking up, during that time. And it's like, why? Well, here's here's some of that reason why, because I was fighting the circadian rhythm, the circadian biology.
Yep. Yep. Waist circumference, body weight. What are some of the other ones here? We just
Hunger,
talked about
satiety,
what was that?
hunger and satiety.
Again, another one about hunger and satiety, right?
Yeah.
So, I
Uh,
want to make sure I'm really clear on that fasting glucose or insulin sensitivity. So the fasting glucose, kind of in the blood sugar conversation,
mhm.
we talked about the weight loss, waist circumference, absolutely, much better in the early consumption group, the breakfast group. But fasting glucose was 11.5% decreased versus 4.2% decrease in the dinner group. So
Wow.
if you're noticing that your morning blood sugars aren't where you want to be, guess what? Move your fasting window to the morning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
fasting
because you
insulin,
spend a third of the time asleep, but then if you're having those late meals, they're leading to increased blood sugar overnight, and then you don't have there's not really any levers that the body can pull. It just has to wait. You just have to wait for those to come down, but you're not really burning through much sugar overnight.
I say this to my kids who want to have a snack accident after they've eaten dinner and already had a snack before bed. I'm like, nothing good comes from eating after 8 p.m.
Right. Yeah, you're just bored.
Not worried about the calorie. I'm worried about the sleep,
Right.
right? And the
Yeah, yeah,
long-term effects. So fasting glucose, fasting insulin, 51% decrease versus 29%. So great, right? 29% with the dinner group, but 51%,
yeah.
right? And then HOMA IR, which is the industry, like the well-known standard for insulin resistance, 57% decrease from the breakfast versus 32% in the evening, right?
Incredible.
So these women were on a 1,400 calorie a day plan. So we're going to
Hmm.
see considerable improvements here.
Sure.
But
Which is somewhere around that 1 pound a week kind of fat loss
yep,
calculation, somewhere around there.
yep. So 33% decrease in triglycerides, right? We talked about that, but a 14% increase. So what is that delta? 50, 43, 50, almost, wait, almost 50%? Is that right?
Mm.
I'm not good at math in real time.
Yeah, it's incredible because when you go from one side of that to the other, you can feel that difference. I mean, just waking up each day after those kind of evening times where that sleep was protected. What I really would have liked to see was how was their recovery? How was their heart rate
Yeah.
variability? What did their sleep quality look like? Because I bet you we would see some substantial differences and deltas between the actual sleep recovery percentages between these two groups too.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. The last thing I want to, well, there's a thousand more things I want to talk about, but we're going to try to keep it as streamlined as possible. Here is the consistency part, right? We always talk about beginning with the end in mind, hunger cues, etc. So
Mhm.
during meal challenges, the big breakfast group had lower daily glucose and insulin spikes. Well, we already saw that. We just shared those numbers, right? Here's
Mhm.
the kicker: less hunger and higher satiety, 31% higher satiety throughout the day after eating the earlier, I'm going to say, we're calling it the breakfast group, but I'm going to call it the early fasting window group,
Okay.
the early OMAD group, when you're going to eat your meal, right?
Yeah.
31% higher. My gosh, like you could take the hard way and get some benefit
You got a white knuckle through the day.
of OMADing or late meal windowing, right?
Mhm.
If can you unpack that to make sure that that's landing? Like you're going to have a later small meal, big meal if you're doing TMAD, or a later OMAD versus an earlier TMAD, like two meals
Yeah.
or protein paste, or an earlier one meal a day. Like you're going to have 31%. You could do it the hard way, right? Or you could do it the easy way and get a 31% less hunger throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, what I just heard there was if you're used to doing OMAD dinner being the main choice for 90+% of us,
Right.
just by default, taking that and moving it at least a few hours earlier, going to a lunch OMAD, or potentially even better, a at least an occasional breakfast OMAD, getting a very different physiological response. It would have been interesting to see them kind of do a lunch group as well,
Right.
you
Right.
know. But for a group that this size, it may not have had the statistical power to actually draw any real significant conclusions. So you don't want to split hairs when you're designing a study like this. But if you do that on an OMAD basis, you're likely to feel very different, and then have less time during the day where you have that frustrated hunger pangs, stomach growling, all of those kind of things. And then if you're doing like you mentioned a TMAD, like a 2 meals a day, or some sort of window, let's say it was like a 4 hour window. Let's say that you could have a breakfast window, maybe that's opens up around breakfast time, maybe 7 a.m. to about 11 a.m., something like that. If your nutrition comes in during that time versus a much more common, probably like, if you were gonna if we polled 1,000 people, we'd probably find a 4 hour window would be most common around 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., or maybe even 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., something like that. There is going to be a huge difference in the physiological response, and then what's going on the scale, what's going on in the blood work, and then what's going on as far as hunger cues, and having to kind of white knuckle through a lot of those days too. It's going to be significantly harder and less comfortable with those eating windows, right?
100%. And for folks that are already having weight loss resistance or trouble sticking to a plan or struggle with hunger and food relationships, maybe you have some of the things on the metabolic spectrum, metabolic syndrome categories, right?
Hmm.
Dyslipidemia, elevated blood pressure, glucose imbalances, all of that stuff, diagnosed or undiagnosed.
Yeah.
I mean, this could really be a simple non-pharmacological strategy, right? Like this isn't some major overhaul. It's like, all right, well, I'm just going to stop eating dinner. The problem is that typically fits from a simplistic standpoint. We got this a
Hmm.
lot is like, well, how am I going to extend my fasting windows, or how am I going to do this like when my kids don't understand why I'm not going to be eating dinner with them?
Yeah, yeah.
Like the lifestyle, societal, like the resistance from the spousal unit, the friends, family, etc.
Sure. Or
It's
FOMO,
or
dinner
FOMO.
FOMO. Yeah, fear of missing out.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, the benefits clearly outweigh the juice is clearly worth the squeeze, is how I'm going to say it,
Hmm.
right? Is um I mean, if we go back to the episode about IFP 1 and 2, and I know I keep referencing it in all these episodes post recording that one, but it really is one of the keystone articles that we're going to leverage moving forward, because it proves a lot of the things that we see from our own DEXA scans and coaching clients and body
Hmm.
composition changes and sustainability stuff, is like, you can do anything for the short term. So is it, if you're, going to be doing, let's say, a 36 hour or a 60 hour, extended fast once a week to see all of those body composition changes, with protein paced meals, 1 to 2 times a week, I think it's okay for you to tell your kids or your spouse, hey, I'm just not hungry tonight.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to forget in a few minutes.
Right.
Not mommy's not eating because she makes bad food choices and she's stressed out and her hormones are whack, and or daddy's just fat and overweight and drinks too much beer and he doesn't, I just got to skip dinner. Like,
Yeah.
man, I got calories are killing me. Like, no, you don't have to.
You don't have to unpack all the luggage for them.
No, just, hey, I'm not hungry. Mommy had a big lunch. Daddy had a big lunch.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're varying that day, now, if you have a Friday dinner or a Sunday meal post church, or you have something, a non negotiable, I'd say, sure. But specifically with this study, it's really cool to see the metabolic outcomes and the improvements. So instead of yearly blood work, hey doc, here's where I'm at. Oh well, yeah, we're gonna need to watch this. The wait and see method, which means you don't actually do anything. You
Right.
just wait and see. Or you can adopt this strategy with your 1 meal a day or 2 meal a day a few times a week to make sure that you're not always in the category of dinner as default.
Yeah. Dinner default is like it's not as effective as you'd hope that it would be. Right. And then it is very simplistic, which is nice. So it's repeatable, sustainable.
Now,
But
it's worked for me at times, as it's worked for you too,
for
right?
sure. No, I've done hundreds. I'm trying to think if it could be that. No, I've definitely done
Not
hundreds.
not enough years,
I've done
not enough
hundreds of,
days.
of dinner OMAD for sure, for sure.
Right, right.
But the lunch OMADs and the sprinkled in and out breakfast OMADs, which tend to be more like a Sunday, those can be a great time for a breakfast OMAD. And it is really, really powerful and kind of surprising what the hunger cues do throughout the rest of the day, you know?
Yep.
And then you also get to thinking, okay, you mentioned the 36-hour fast and the 60-hour fast, getting into that more extended range. And you might want to implement one of those, on occasion, or maybe it's once every week or a week or two.
Yep.
And
Yep.
but when you do that coming off of the earlier fast, you had the better physiological response. You had more time to actually process through that fuel that you brought in. That actually makes the next fast a bit easier. And sometimes it's not just a bit easier. Sometimes it's substantially easier. So when you talk about adapting a fasting lifestyle, these are big levers. And it's not just to like optimize that triglyceride reduction, which is absolutely huge, but the benefits continue to cascade after that too.
Yeah, 100%. So, really cool study. Now, I want to address the calorie thing. So, 1,400 calories. And,
Hmm.
I can hear some people like, wow, that seems really low if you're new to fasting.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're on, 20, 30, 40 years of, the diet roller coaster and you're doing the 800 to 1,200 calories a day, and you've been able to white knuckle it and lose 20 pounds, but then gain 25, lose 23, gain 28, and you're on that kind of ascending regain train, right?
Oh, you're describing me from
Right.
from back then. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Fasting is a powerful tool because of the fact that it is, when you fast, growth hormone spikes and it doesn't build muscle, right? That's a separate physiological process called weightlifting or weight bearing exercise,
Hmm.
right? Lifting weights, resistance training, however you want to label it, rucking with a weight vest, right? Putting some strain and stress on your muscular system to build that and stimulate muscle growth, right? Through the
Yeah.
AMPK pathway.
Right.
However, when you fast, you do have growth hormone, which is lean body protective. So it is if you're doing, this is the obese overweight category with metabolic disease. So do you want to do the low and slow, frustrated, I'm always hungry, probably not going to stick to it plan? Or do you want to try something different for 12 weeks with the changes that we just shared with you in terms of weight loss, waist circumference, cardiometabolic profile improvement, etc.? Like, yeah, get a scale that measures your body comp, right?
Hmm.
You don't have to do a DEXA scan. It's not gonna be insanely accurate from a precision standpoint compared to a DEXA or a full body MRI, which can be cost prohibitive, right? DEXA is
Sure.
not
Of
so
course.
much. I mean, 70, $80 around here in Houston, one of the fourth largest city in the country. It's 70, $80, right?
Yeah.
Um, but one of those scales that can show you the trends and do 12 weeks, shifting your fasting, join a challenge, grab the blueprint to fasting for fat loss, but shift that window earlier, stick to it. And in 90 days, you're not going to do anything detrimental, even if you're still worried about, oh, 1,400 isn't enough. If you're hitting your protein, right, 35 to 40% protein, back filling it with fat and healthy, non refined, non processed carbohydrates, um, with regardless if you're doing weight training, uh, you're still going to see incredible results.
Right.
1,400 calories, like, yeah, okay, might seem low, but we have a lot of people that underconsume and overfast,
Hmm.
right? And overconsume and underfast. There is a sweet spot for each one of us. This 12 weeks, like you can do anything for 12 weeks. You're not going to be doing any long-term damage. You're actually going to be getting all of these additional major crazy benefits.
Hmm.
Add in some walking with a weight vest, add in some resistance training 2 to 3 times a week, and you have a perfect recipe for long-term success, Tommy. I just want to make sure that, somebody pulls the article and they might see the comments or they might see, the calorie count and be like, whoa, that seems so low. Well, yeah, but on off diet mentality, are you really in that low 800 to 1,200 calorie, 1,400 calorie deficit if you're on and offing it every weekend?
Right.
If you're
Right.
gaining weight, you're in the surplus.
Yeah. And at the very least, even if you were 100% on, but you were still gaining weight, then you're likely in a low calorie but high insulin environment, which could be worse
Or inefficient insulin
anyway.
environment,
Yeah.
right?
100%. And if you go back to the IFP article, the intermittent fasting with protein pacing, and we talked about
We mentioned
what,
again.
yeah, well, if you go back and look at the astounding results that they got, we talked about what their actual weekly caloric load was. And it was around 9,500 calories per week. So if you take that over 7 days, it's just under 1,400. It's about 1,357 calories
And
per week.
What do we recommend on an OMAD day?
Yeah, about half your calories, about half your needs.
50 to 60%.
Sure, yeah.
60%, probably around that same number.
Good spot to be in if you want to have a built-in caloric deficit, so you have the need to go into some long-term fat stores, right? If the purpose is fat burning. Now, if the purpose isn't fat burning, then backfill some more of those calories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to overcomplicate it. We just have to see which levers are going to be important to pull, and then make some of the proactive decisions beforehand.
Yep.
Right. And then stop getting caught up in the analysis paralysis noise from some of the old school mentality. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. I love it. I think you just tied a bow on today's episode, Tommy.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you guys are looking for additional support, head to the show notes, grab a resource, click a link, join a challenge. As I mentioned, we absolutely love and appreciate those reviews. Please keep them coming. Share the podcast. Reach out to us if you got questions. Send us an article if you want us to talk about it.
Yeah.
Happy to do it. We get lots of messages, so if we haven't gotten back to you, it is not intentional. I promise you that. But Tommy, as always, man, I appreciate the conversation. Love the energy that we started 2025 with. Lots of cool things coming for Fasting for Life. Yeah, man, appreciate the talk today, and shift those windows earlier in the day, set those timers, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thanks. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.